Hey, this is Elwin Robertson. This is the Rejuvenate podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And today I'm joined again by Jacob, otherwise known as the real Heisenberg on social media, the creator of the HG7 formula, or as it's known colloquially among me and my friends, just Jacob's formula. So either I think works. I might use both terms during this interview. And well, I think this is going to be more of a conversation than an interview this time. So the plan is in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing some test results. The two questions I get asked all the time about this formula are, do you think it's working? What have your results been so far? And is it dangerous? Have you been testing? Is it okay? And so I want to answer both of those. And I'm going to do a share screen and actually with full transparency show you my test results. But also there's been some updates to the formula. I know a lot of you are actually doing it who are watching or listening, or you have at least considered it. And so we wanted to do update, but more than that, really give more guidance to people about how to do it if you want to do this experiment in the safest way possible. And we might end up talking about a bunch of other stuff we don't have planned. So welcome to the podcast again, Jacob.
Thank you for having me. It feels like it hasn't been very long since we last talked, but it does feel like a lot's happened since then, especially with the dosages. So it's good to be here and talk about that.
Yeah, well, let's start with that. I don't know exactly how we'll do it, but I think I'll definitely share my results and my test results, but I might leave that till later because that's just me talking about me, which I know some of you are interested in. But let's talk about you first, the listener. So we want to give a bit of a warning first that this is an experimental formula that there's several dozen researchers. Would you say that's fair at this stage, Jacob? Or is it over 100 now?
Yeah, I mean, confirmed that I've spoken to probably a few dozen, but well, maybe it's hit 100 at this point, but not every single one has gotten the same level of attention. We might consider one person to just be a guy who said, "Hey, I'm on this, it's feeling good," and that's it. Like that's all I've ever heard from the person after that.
Yep.
So
You tend to hear it. You tend to hear from the people who have a problem rather than the people who are just getting on with it. That's absolutely true.
Yep. If people are posted on the forum, they are usually in need of help. And if people are doing well, they don't usually take the time to say, "Hey, things are going well," unless something's like crazy well. And most of the people who have experienced those crazy good experiences have already posted on the forum long ago. And now they're just riding the wave, I imagine, because otherwise they'd be messaging me and saying, "Hey, this isn't working." So not getting any of that. We do have a couple people on the forum that are struggling. And I think maybe raising the dosages and lowering the dosages is just a little hard for people, and calibration is certainly difficult. So we're here to talk about that. But yeah, let's first get into maybe a brief synopsis of what we're talking about.
Yeah, so go for it. What are we talking about?
Yeah, so HG7, which actually that name was suggested by the forum owner operator, stands for Holy Grail 7 nutrients. I like it because it also plays on the name Heisenberg, HG. And it also 7 is vitamin B7 was kind of like the biggest discovery of this formula, I would say, because there's no information out there to tell you to take so much pure powder that I'm recommending. So there's 7 nutrients of this formula. It's more of a protocol than an actual supplement that I'm recommending. So it's a protocol of 7 different nutrients. 3 different B vitamins, vitamin B6, B7, and B5. B5 being pantothenic acid, B7 being biotin, and B6 being pyridoxynitrochloride. And then there is zinc and molybdenum, which are the 2 minerals of this formula. And then there is EGCG, which is the antioxidant. And then there's vitamin C, which is kind of part vitamin, part antioxidant as well. And all these nutrients combined are supposed to, well, I'm theorizing, activate these functions in the body that deplete heavy metals. And the way it does that, I'm theorizing, is that the B vitamins and vitamin C are kind of working together to extract these heavy metals from your tissues and sort of cue them up in your liver to the detoxification sites to leave the body. But just extracting them from the tissues to the liver is not enough to do the job. Otherwise, people wouldn't be as sick as we are, because we all take tons of vitamins in our multivitamin. And so you have to get the ratios just right of all of those vitamins, and you have to include an antioxidant like EGCG, which is what I use to bind to those metals. And that EGCG will, what's say, chelate. They'll chelate those metals and allow the body to not recognize them as recyclable, and it'll pass them through the body when normally it would just recycle these metals, put them back in the tissues, because for whatever reason the body likes to retain metal, and it's really hard to get rid of. And so you're extracting these metals from the tissues with the B vitamins and vitamin C, and you're chelating them with the EGCG, and then you're sort of completing the process by filling the gaps of what you just chelated out with more zinc. So that's replenishing your zinc levels. And those who have higher copper levels, that tends to surface during this process, and so you need extra molybdenum with that, because that molybdenum is going to produce uric acid to get rid of that copper. So this whole process is, in my main theory, is that it's surfacing iron and copper. For some people, it's more iron. For some people, it's more copper. For some people, it's both, like myself, and other various metals that I'm not going to speak any confidence on, because I haven't done any research on the other metals, just iron and copper. But people like yourself are seeing lead come out, other metals. So this is theoretically taking all of that metal and getting it out of the body and replenishing zinc at the same time. And the goal of that is eventually to cause the body to go into a DNA heal mode that it couldn't have done before, because theoretically that zinc level building is giving the body what it needs to turn on the telomerase production to increase telomeres health in the little strands of your DNA. And again, that's all theory, and I'm sure it plays on many theories that are already out there and a lot of scientific evidence. But the problem most people have had with doing that kind of research is there's only certain amounts of zinc that you can take in a day. There's only certain amounts of EGCG that you can take in a day, and they are far, far less than what this protocol calls for. But with the combined efforts of all of these vitamins, each vitamin nutrient in this formula has like a positive and negative effect, and each other nutrient like negates the negative effect of one of those other nutrient of something else. And so all 7 of these work together to kind of negate each other's negative effects while giving you the positive benefit of heavy metal chelation and replenishment of zinc seamlessly. If you get the ratios right, that's the hard part of this formula, is getting those ratios right. We still haven't figured out the perfect ratios, and we don't even know if there is a perfect ratio. We don't know if everyone's different. I mean, we've already kind of discovered that some people don't need as much molybdenum per se. Some people need more EGCG, some people need more zinc. So there's, as we were discussing earlier, the personal responsibility and the accountability aspect you kind of have to take, because I can't give you the perfect ratio so far that we've seen. I can get you close, and I can get you to a point where you can figure it out on your own if you do some research and read that form that we have going. But that's kind of where we're at right now, is just trialing dosages. And so far, the effects of that have been, those who are having success with it are having positive effects in mood, skin, strength gains. I mean, people have posted in the forum things like strength gains they've never seen before. People are able to handle toxins easier. Like, people are drinking 3 times as much and not seeing any of the downsides that they normally would have saw from drinking that much. I myself can smoke a heck of a lot more than I probably should, and I don't really have any, like, I'm not wheezing at night. I mean, if I am, I just take more EGCG and I'm good. Anyway, we're rambling on here, but the point is this overall replenishment of zinc is increasing your DNA health to the point where everything in your body heals over time. That's the theory. And with that, your body's balance or like your physical attributes, like the symmetry in your face, start to improve. Your hair gets thicker. As a man, you might experience a deeper voice. You might see shoulders broadening, waist slimming. You might see muscle growth as a woman. My girlfriend, for example, has seen hourglass improvements in her figure. Her bones are reshaping with her hormones, because this is affecting hormones, is the theory. And so as it's balancing those hormones, your hormones are sort of changing your body. And so we've seen all sorts of benefits in terms of body changes, hair growth, mood. everything that would be observable just in everyday life, like digestion and everything has improved for those who are having success. There are a few people who are still trying to find those ratios, though. So that's where we're at. Sorry, I went on
That's
a long.
great. Yeah, okay, so a couple of things. The forum you keep referring to, lowtoxinforum.com. We'll put a link in the show notes, as we always do, but you can always find it there and then search HG7 in the search field. Yeah, so interesting. Like one of the things you're talking about is like metals in general, and then you're specifically focusing on, as you said, iron and copper. But I think you are seeing that it helps with other metals as well. I think I saw a comment in the forum recently that intrigued me. I made a note to ask you about. You said that copper was almost more of a side quest, I think you put it as. And then the iron is more the main villain, and maybe other minerals as well. So that's a bit of a shift from before. And it's interesting because it made me think, after I first, was investigating your work, I read a book by a guy called Dr. Walsh, who worked with, I think, tens of thousands of people with, metal toxicity, specifically copper toxicity, as well as a bunch of other stuff. And his take on it was that copper, on average, only takes a few months to clear copper toxicity, and it has huge impact on people. And so I was interested. We'll tell my story a bit later, but that kind of seems to have been the case for me, that the copper toxicity cleared, fairly quickly. But then other stuff is, still a long way away from being resolved, it seems. And so, yeah, so that's my experience. But tell me what led you to make that statement. What makes you start to see iron as the main villain more than copper, as you've seen more people's results?
Well, because normally under normal circumstances, you should be getting some amount of molybdenum and zinc in your diet for that copper to excrete. And I just think it's really easy to excrete copper if you get the ratios of these nutrients right. The hard part is balancing that with the right amount of iron to get rid of, because that copper won't excrete if there's too much iron in the body. At least that's what I'm theorizing, because every time I tried to take any sort of copper removal mechanism, the zinc, the molybdenum, if I needed EGCG and I try to take zinc or molybdenum or any of the B vitamins or vitamin C, I throw up. My body won't take it. And then I take the EGCG and suddenly my body happily takes in all of these other nutrients. And those other nutrients have been proven, especially molybdenum, to deplete copper, like flush it out in the air. And like that's a known thing that it can do. At least.
And for those to whom what you just said is a bit subjective, I will affirm that from my experience, when my uric acid starts to go high end of normal, not crazy high, but high, you said it's because I wasn't taking enough EGCG. Because if I did, the EGCG would reduce the iron, exposing the copper, and then the body would use the uric acid to clear away the copper. That was your theory. I did it, and I found that to be accurate again and again and again. So it's actually an interesting, novel, and I know you don't recommend anyone do, any of the nutrients on their own, but it does kind of indicate to me that someone with high uric acid, a potential treatment for that is taking EGCG, because it seems to be so effective at lowering the uric acid. To me, it just seems to do it almost like clockwork. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, and like I don't ever want to say don't take any of these nutrients isolated. It's just the balance of all of these I've found is so fickle. Like you could take a couple capsules of EGCG probably on its own and be okay, but if you do that for like even just 3 days in a row, you'll start to get stomach cramps. You'll start to feel kind of pains. Most people will. Now, some people can be extremely iron toxic and they'll just keep feeling better and better. But for a lot of people, that'll reveal copper that wasn't able to excrete before. And that copper rush, the rush of free copper is going to start causing like pressures in the body, little symptoms here and there that's just waiting to excrete. Do that enough and you'll turn bipolar, schizophrenic. I mean, that's my theory, is they get enough free copper that's not excreting and it goes to the places like the brain, starts overstimulating you, and then lo and behold, you start hearing and seeing things that you shouldn't. And your emotions are through the roof.
So I never had hallucinations, but I can again affirm what you're saying from my own experience, that not so much recently, because I seem to have cleared copper unless a new wave exposes itself. But yeah, for a long time, if I had the EGCG, I would feel really bad, which is why I actually didn't have it for a while, for the first few weeks. So I completely understand. It brings me back to, that was the other thing I wanted to highlight and zoom in on your opening synopsis, and it's what you said about zinc and EGCG, how they at the amount that you need to take, like you can't take the amount that you need to take to effectively detox these nutrients. So why not, for those who are not familiar with it, why can't you just have a very large dose of zinc, or why can't you just have a very large dose of EGCG?
There is an exception, and that is if you were already extremely low on zinc, for example. Like maybe you could handle 200 milligrams with a meal once. Like I would maybe say once, maybe you could handle that. But every day, no, you'll start to throw up real quick. And the reason why is because I think, anyway, is zinc is causing a pushing mechanism of metals into the blood from like the liver. It's like displacing free copper. Displacing it from whether it's the liver or the tissues, wherever, any residual copper that maybe hasn't made it with the vitamins, whatever, the zinc tends to push out. And if there's too much of that free metal in your blood already, the body doesn't want to take in any more zinc, because the body's going to try and put that zinc in the receptor sites. And if it doesn't fit, it's going to surge it through the blood, or it's going to push out more copper into the blood. If iron's there, I don't think zinc pushes the copper out, but if iron's not there, I think zinc will push the copper into the blood, and that causes pressures and all of that, and you need molybdenum to balance that out. And if you don't take that, you'll thirst pretty quick, from what I've experienced. But not everyone has that much free copper, so some people can handle more zinc and less molybdenum. But the EGCG portion is like almost universally required for people to take the levels I'm talking about, which is around up to 200 to 300 milligrams per dose, depending on how much you calibrate.
Okay, well, let's get into that. Let's talk about, so can you talk about the bigger dose, why it's your new recommended dose, and what it is, but with the caveat that you're responsible for your own actions.
Yes.
We are discussing a research project. This is not medical advice by any means. This is two researchers speculating about research. So yes, please go ahead.
Yep. And again, I don't make any money on this, so don't come looking to sue me.
And I'm not making any money promoting. In fact, it costs money to get one of these episodes edited.
You're gracious enough to do this for free.
We're just doing it because we find it interesting. So yes, please.
Well, now I've forgotten what was
So what's the big dose? Why the big dose? And what does it consist of?
So this dosage has
been the new standard dose. Sorry, it's not a big dose to you. Yeah, the new standard dose.
We've been fluctuating this dose for probably 6 months now since it's been up on the forum. We're still trying to get it just right. Originally, it was posted closer to what it is now, which is 200 milligrams of B6, 500 milligrams of biotin, and I really recommend the pure powder on that. Doing pills of biotin is hard when you can really usually only find the 10 milligram unless you go online. But anyway, so 500 milligrams of B5, 500 milligrams of biotin, 200 milligrams of B6, 7,000 to 8,000 milligrams of vitamin C, 200 to 300 milligrams of zinc. And I don't recommend taking all 300 milligrams at once. I recommend breaking it up, taking 200 milligrams to start and then waiting a little bit and then taking another 100 milligrams with more molybdenum and EGCG, which I'll get to in a minute. But
so let's just give the starting dose before the calibration then. So before the calibration, it's 200.
Starting dose is 200 milligrams of zinc, 200 milligrams of B6, 500 milligrams of biotin, 500 milligrams of B5, 7,000 to 8,000 milligrams of C, and then and that just, you got to play that one by ear based on taste test. If it makes you gag, go the lower end.
EGCG?
EGCG is about 22 to 2,400 milligrams of EGCG per 200 milligrams of zinc, and then 6 to 7 milligrams of molybdenum. And if you are someone who doesn't need as much molybdenum, you'll have to play that one by ear too. And so the calibration is there because this dosage almost requires more of the minerals now that we're finding in the EGCG. There's a balance between the vitamins and the minerals in EGCG that is really hard to find Too little of the vitamins and the minerals will become too harsh on the body. Too much of the vitamins, and you start requiring more minerals. And so you got to get that balance just right. And I think it's somewhere, I mean, we're at the point now where I think the vitamins are a little excessive, and it's causing people to have to take an extra calibration or two of extra zinc, molybdenum, and EGCG, which I have on the forum. And every calibration attempt is usually around 500 milligrams of EGCG, 50 to 100 milligrams of zinc, and around 1 to 2 milligrams of molybdenum. And you have to
And can
do
we
that.
explain, sorry, what does the term calibration even mean in this context?
When I say calibration, what I mean is the standard dose is there to set you a base level, and then you have to determine, how does this make me feel? And that sounds very vague, so I'm going to explain that a little better. There's a whole list of symptoms that you can get from being low on any one of these nutrients or several of these nutrients. Now, the problem is, like I said in the beginning, most people are, I mean, we're not all completely identical. There is a balance that we're all trying to achieve, but we're not all starting from the same point. And some people don't have as much of every mineral that everyone else does. So, for example, if someone who has high copper, they're going to need more molybdenum generally, whereas someone who has low copper, they're going to need less molybdenum. Someone who's very high iron is going to need more EGCG. Someone who's very low iron is probably not going to need as much EGCG, though I do think at a certain point, we all get to a point where we find more iron in the body to pull from at a similar ratio. Anyway.
And so, actually, yeah, before we move on to that, can we do a digression on that? Because you and I have had interesting conversations privately about like the types, and I'm not asking for any wild speculation, but like you said, for me, for instance, I don't strike you as a copper type or a high copper type. I strike you as a more high iron type. Would you mind sharing like how you identify that in people?
So copper, people who are higher in copper tend to be more childlike, almost more. I mean, higher estrogen levels, I would say. Softer faces, not quite as rugged. You know, men aren't. They're just very childlike.
So softer, like a little bit chubbier, maybe.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is they also tend to have more hair than those who are low copper type. They tend to have more hair on their heads usually, from what I find.
The women as well, or just the men?
Yeah, both, from what I experienced. Now, however, if you're high copper and high iron, that's different. It's the high iron folks, I think, that lose their hair. My older brother lost his hair, a little bit, and he's definitely a high iron individual. I can tell just looking at him because his skin's really, really dark, and we're Caucasian. So I would imagine there's something going on with the melanin producer metals in his body being a little excessively high. He's got very chronic fatigue. He's very a quiet guy. So I mean, the typical high iron personality is you're not really stimulated in life. You're kind of mellow. You're shut down even. And this is when you get to the very excessive levels of iron, to the point where your zinc isn't working anymore.
So I think you described as kind of heaviness, right?
Yeah, heaviness. It is a heavy mineral. It's and it tends to block B vitamin and vitamin C usage, because if your body takes in too much of those vitamins, it'll search the blood with all that iron, which it doesn't want, because iron will sort of deplete your electrolytes and dehydrate you that way. And so the body has this. Well, and again, this is mostly theory. I'm sure you could find bits and pieces on the internet that support this, but iron, your body's kind of smart in that way, where it's like, well, I don't want all this iron in the blood right now, so otherwise it'll dehydrate me and I can't function that way. So I'm going to store it in the tissues, and I'm going to rob my zinc receptors, because the zinc and iron share the same storage sites in the body, from what I'm theorizing. And so because zinc is a lighter mineral and it'll sweat out easier, your iron will take precedence and push that zinc out of the receptor. The zinc will sweat out of the body, and then your body can no longer even take more zinc in. Like, taking zinc alone won't help the problem, because it's lighter in that molecular weight. It's going to sweat out. The iron is going to take precedence. That's where the EGCG comes in and binds to that iron, and all the other vitamins circulate it out. And the body doesn't recognize that iron as something that it wants anymore, because that EGCG molecule like clumps all around it, and said the body's like, all right, I don't recognize this as a mineral that I need anymore. Pass it through the bile ducts, or maybe even the urine. I'm not sure.
And so for that assertion Jacob just made, by the way, that the body can't take in that zinc, I'm going to provide a little bit of evidence for that later for my own test results. But yeah, anyway, that's so okay. So you described quite a few of the downsides of iron. What about more of the downsides of copper? So you said childlike. That's
Yeah,
not necessarily a
childlike.
bad thing,
It's
though.
yeah,
So
it's stimulating. It's a stimulant of the body, so it's gonna stimulate your hormones in a negative way a little bit. It's gonna stimulate your emotions. I mean, people who have high copper levels, in my experience, that I mean, and I can't really speak with more certainty than anecdotal evidence, but those who I have verified, like have had the hair test to show high copper, they're always a little bit wired. They're like, I'm a little bit wired. You're a little bit all over the place. They're wiggy, Whereas
so you were saying they're like a bit of emotional roller coaster or bipolar or something, whereas you were saying the iron types are more stoic, but
stoic,
could
chronic
also be
fatigue,
heavy,
yeah,
depressed kind of thing. Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
And their digestions shut down. And those with high copper, often can be very brilliant, but it's outweighed by the emotional turmoil that they experience constantly because everything's firing on 100, at 100 miles an hour in their brains, which helps people think faster. But if it fires too quickly, it starts misfiring and starts short circuiting, and you start, like my little sister was speaking in broken sentences, and she couldn't even grasp reality anymore because the misfiring was happening too much. And women, I think, are more prone to it because of menstruation. So they're losing iron easier than they're losing copper. And so their levels of copper stay while their iron drops. And so they go into a more and more bigger state of copper toxicity as time progresses until eventually they hit menopause and then they stop losing blood and then things shift all. I mean, that's why women go through more personality changes, I would imagine, in their lives, is because that copper iron ratio is constantly fluctuating in them.
Yeah, with the menstrual cycle, that makes sense. To me, the copper thing, like so, the extreme of copper Wilson's disease, it can give a person psychopathic traits. But I think again, anecdotally, at a less extreme level than that, you said it's childlike, but like, so all children are born narcissistic, right? This is something that you hopefully grow out of as you mature emotionally. And I think what I've observed is perhaps that the higher copper people are childlike, as you said, in a good way, like strong imaginations and a certain joy for life and stuff like that. Sometimes, depending on where they are on their emotional roller coaster, but they're all potentially quite self-centered. Yes, that's what I was going to say. With the extreme of that being psychopathic, but more the mild version maybe being just to some degree narcissistic. So I think that's more of the bad side of the copper. And there's a thing you see with narcissists, they tend to look actually young for their age generally. Like they often look quite childlike.
I have a theory that those who are high copper and high iron see a lot of testosterone convert to estrogen, and those who are just high iron see a lot of testosterone convert to DHT. And so that's why I think people who have higher iron levels but lower copper, they often have more facial hair, more body hair. They're a little more aggressive, maybe a little bit. Those who are higher copper tend to be softer, more gentle.
Maybe put on more weight as well. With
Maybe
estrogen.
less muscle but more fat.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
And then those who are low iron and low copper, high zinc always have really nice physiques. So I mean, you'll find this a lot in like Hawaiian builds. Like they have a lot of. I think they have a high zinc diet in Hawaii, but last I read, but I could be wrong on that. But my friend who is half Hawaiian has an extremely built physique naturally, and he consumes a lot of high zinc foods all the time, and like has since he was a little kid. So I mean it's all anecdotal, but I always absorb little bits and pieces of my life like that and try to connect dots and say, okay, like what is he eating or what is he doing that's different? Why does he have a physique that is naturally muscular and toned, whereas I'm working out religiously and can't or I was and couldn't maintain tone to save my life.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, in terms of categories of foods, like, what is the highest zinc food and not also high copper and iron? Because that's the balance you're talking
Yeah,
about,
I wonder
right?
if it's like pork. Like pork is really high in B6, I think.
B1 especially, probably B6 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like when I think of Hawaiian food, I think of like Kalua pig, which is like one of my favorite meals, by the way. But I wonder if that's just like higher B6 diet, different areas. which helps with absorption.
I think beef and lamb and maybe pork are the higher zinc compared to copper and iron ratio overall. It's funny, not chicken, and like cultures where people eat more beef tend to grow taller than cultures where people eat a mainly chicken diet, which I thought was quite interesting.
I read a fact that Japan has one of the longest lifespans, I think, and they drink a lot of green tea over there, which has EGCG in it. Granted, very mild amounts, I'm sure, in what they brew, but it's there.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And they also have natto kinase. They have natto fermented soy, which has significant cardiovascular protective benefits. Yeah, so there's a lot of different factors, but yeah, okay. So all right, that was a bit of speculation on the different types, which hopefully is fun for people. I don't think you've posted about that anywhere online, so that's a Rejuvenate podcast exclusive. But okay, let's go
I'm going
back.
to add to that a little bit. So
Yeah, please.
there's a difference between a high testosterone looking guy and a high dihydrotestosterone, DHT looking guy. And this is just anecdotally, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure you have done plenty of research on your own on this. But from my experience, DHT is like the body hair,
It's more androgenic.
yeah,
traits.
yeah. And whereas testosterone is more about drive and passion and maybe a little bit of strength, but more maybe body tone, like muscular tone. Whereas dihydrotestosterone is more about has more prone to the aggressive side. So when people think like steroids and like the aggressive crazy guy,
that's not accurate. DHT
that's DHT.
DHT is a much more stronger GABA agonist. So I think when you talk about the iron types being more stoic and less emotional, you're onto something there because they have more of a GABA hit. But
I just corrected my own theory here. What if it's the high copper people that experience that aggression on steroids? Because
I was about to say, yeah. My understanding is it's the high estrogen more.
That makes more sense.
Uses. Yeah,
I don't know where I read it, but the DHT, I know it has something to do with body hair more than testosterone.
They do have definitely more body hair and less head hair on average.
Yeah.
Yes.
The higher testosterone people tend to have a higher muscular tone. Am I correct to say that?
So DHT is the most androgenic hormone. Testosterone is the most anabolic hormone. So you're 100% correct. Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. So
and also you're correct to say that testosterone people would have more maybe enthusiasm and stuff because the DHT is so GABA stimulating that it could actually sedate people to some degree, whereas with testosterone it's more stimulating and energizing.
Genetic Insights provides cutting-edge, affordable DNA testing, giving you access to over 500 health reports that can help you in 3 key ways. They may be able to resolve your existing health challenges even when nothing else has worked. Using simple lifestyle changes, their reports can help you reduce your risk of developing future health challenges that you may be genetically predisposed to. And they can help you feel more confident in your health by showing you where you are genetically strong. Unlike most other genetic health testing companies, Genetic Insights tests over 83 million different variations in your genes, guaranteeing 99.7% accuracy across all of their DNA reports. They cover almost every aspect of health, including digestive issues, cardiovascular health, weight loss, hormonal and blood sugar balance, as well as nutrient needs, allergies and intolerances, and so much more. Using their system is quick and easy, and reading the reports is simple. If you've done an Ancestry DNA test, you can simply download your raw DNA data, upload it to the Genetic Insights platform, and within a few hours you will have access to genetic reports which give you a risk score for each specific issue and scientifically validated recommendations based on your individual genetic profile. Everything in your reports are based on scientific studies, and there are citation links throughout every report. If you are serious about optimizing your health and wellness and feeling great, then getting access to your Genetic Insights reports may be the most important health investment you will ever make. In the reports, not only will you gain insights into how to overcome existing health challenges and avoid future issues, you'll also discover which types of dietary, lifestyle, and even supplement protocols are best for your unique genetics. To get your unique genetic health reports, go to geneticinsights.co and use code REJUVENATE to get 20% off today. That's geneticinsights.co using coupon code REJUVENATE to get 20% off today.
Thank you for correcting me. I've never really quite sure on that one, but I do know that the testosterone itself is not what makes people so aggressive. It's whatever testosterone's converting to, that from like an unhealthy body, whether that be estrogen, DHT, whatever. I'm sure
I'm pretty sure it's estrogen. Yeah, maybe combined with the testosterone. Like
And
if
women
you,
need testosterone too, and they need to know that. You need good, healthy testosterone as a woman. Otherwise, you're gonna have no sex drive. You're gonna be lazy and not passionate about anything. It's a life invigorating hormone. You just have to not have an unhealthy body mineral balance so that your hormones are converting improperly. That's the problem. And
yeah,
so that's
often
what this
women
formula is
suffer
attempting
with
to correct.
often women suffer with a lack of progesterone, which is their thing that keeps them calm and opposes estrogen. But yeah, there's this concept called estrogen dominance, right? And I think that's one of the pieces that you have highlighted and focused on is how copper has quite a big role in creating that whole situation.
Yeah, copper, for whatever reason, those who are high copper tend to produce more estrogen from the byproduct of testosterone not working correctly, whereas those who are high iron tend to produce more of the DHT side of things, which maybe that makes sense because it's the GABA calming you down, or whatever you were saying there. It's a sedation kind of effect on the
It's a
body where
sedation effect, yeah.
yeah, you just go into this chronic fatigue state or lack of care or lack of you just what's the word I'm looking for there? The apathetic kind of experience in life where you just don't care anymore. I think that's the really high DHT, high iron kind of inability to keep testosterone as testosterone without converting to estrogen. And then,
Yeah, I think, and those if people who just taken DHT, that DHT on its own is not necessarily going to produce fatigue or any of those kind of things.
no,
But
no.
but I can see how the sedation of the GABA agonist plus the general toxicity of iron together could create that kind of fatigue.
I want
or
to
depression.
clarify it. It's not that's not necessarily the estrogen or the testosterone or the DHT causing any negatives. Well, the estrogen. It's the lack of testosterone staying testosterone. So like if your testosterone production doesn't maintain its blood levels of proper healthy levels, the lack of that ability, whether it's converting to DHT or estrogen or whatever, that I think is what's causing the lack of care and passion in a lot of people. Is just that lack of drive, I guess is the better word. The lack of drive in life to succeed, to not just sex drive, the lack of drive to improve yourself in your career, or the lack of drive to do a push-up or do a few push-ups every day and eat healthy. I think testosterone plays a huge role in that.
It's an interesting theory. I mean, I've also, tended to focus on the opposite on previous episodes, which is not enough testosterone converting to DHT is where you get, such a lack of masculinity in this day and age, where these days men are complaining about anxiety when they hardly have anything going on in their lives, whereas a few generations ago, they were storming the beaches of Normandy and, like doing all these extremely dangerous and difficult things, and they wouldn't dream about like, complaining about their feelings or whatever. So I think overall there's more of an issue with a lack of conversion to DHT. And if iron does cause that, which I haven't seen, but I'm open to the possibility, then I think that's a benefit. But then obviously, what else is iron doing? Iron is a free radical that's damaging the function of every cell of the body and causing it to every part of you to just have less energy in general, right?
It might not be causing you to convert more. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it might be shutting down production of testosterone entirely if it's storing in places like the testes where that testosterone production for men is mostly happening, I imagine. So if that testosterone is taking place of zinc, then the testes shrink. You're at least that's one of the symptoms. I don't know if I listed that on the forum, but if your iron gets too high, your balls shrink. So
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Well, that's what I was going to get to next. Let's talk about those symptoms then. So yeah, you just mentioned one there of too much iron. So there was a lot of speculation there about hormones, but tell us about the things you're sure about. Like, what are the things that you see as practical things for calibration?
if you do the full dose that I post on the forum, which is the higher vitamin end, you can almost be rest assured that if you are experiencing issues, it's one of the three: zinc, molybdenum, or EGCG, or all three of them.
And when you say EGCG, you mean not enough zinc, too much
not
copper,
enough
or too
zinc,
much
not
iron?
enough EGCG, not enough molybdenum. It's usually one of those three, or a combination of the two of the three, or all three. because your vitamins are in an excessive amount to where it can take in more of those three, but you shouldn't, unless you do it wrong and you don't take the right biotin type, which I'm going to get into this real quick. If you neglect even one nutrient, just one nutrient from this formula, biotin, B5, B6, the whole thing doesn't work because your body can only take in so much of each of these nutrients at a time. But the thing is they're all using each other at the same time. If one piece is neglected, that process stops because it needs that piece to continue the process of draining everything. So eventually, if you're too low on, say, biotin, the whole thing starts crumbling and starts robbing you of biotin in other places like your hair, your skin, and eventually it just stops working entirely because the body doesn't want to rob any more biotin from you. And you start to get really, really sick because you've got all this metal in you now. You've just ingested all this EGCG, which is causing a surge of more free copper to be in your blood, and you're not able to excrete any of it because you're missing that one piece of a full chain. If you're missing one piece of a chain, it's not a chain anymore. It's a broken chain. It's not going to work. So anyway, I just want to get that out there. Very important. You cannot come into this like, well, I've taken biotin before. I don't need it. I don't need 500 milligrams. You're going to be in a world of hurt if you do that. It's important to come into this accepting that you are going to have to take everything, or at least try it and then calibrate afterwards.
Basically, if you don't take all the ingredients, you're doing your own experiment, but nothing to do with what you're...
And you're doing your own experiment. Don't blame me when it goes wrong. Yeah, so the symptoms of being low on any one of these, you'll see pretty quickly. I mean, all it takes is really a single dose without any one of these nutrients to start seeing these symptoms, but...
Well, can I read them out and then I'll ask you questions about some of them? All right, so for the first one, this is a symptom of excess copper, which you recommend molybdenum for. And so the list is itchy legs, anger, nausea, pain in arms, left side stomach pain, greasy brittle hair, clammy hands, and pale lips. So itchy legs, is it legs specifically, not itchy arms?
It's your shins specifically, and often feet, like tops of your feet. I don't know what's causing that. I don't know if it's the excessive copper buildup in like the liver or something, but it basically means that there's a copper buildup somewhere and it needs to excrete, and you need to get a bunch of uric acid going, or it's going to...
What if I have itchy arms? Does that not count?
I think that might be more biotin.
Oh, okay. So it really doesn't. All right. So itchy below the waist. Anger is an interesting one. You have a whole kind of section where you talk about emotions later, but you do especially relate that to... So is that because the copper raises adrenaline, or is there more to it?
Yeah. So, and again, I'm focusing on these three calibration tactics first because the vitamins are so high and the minerals are a little bit lower. So again, the anger thing can be multiple things, but I choose molybdenum in this case because of all the things you're taking. The minerals are on the lower side, and between zinc, EGCG, and molybdenum symptoms of being low in any one of those, molybdenum is the one of the three that would cause anger. And the reason why is because your copper is very stimulated at this point in the process if you're low molybdenum. Being low molybdenum indicates that you have a lot of free copper that's trying to excrete at the moment, because molybdenum doesn't store very much at once. When you take molybdenum, it's like a quick shot of it, and your body will produce a lot of uric acid, and then it won't take it anymore, and you'll either sweat out the molybdenum or it'll pee out. It's a pretty light mineral. The problem is it will stimulate detoxification symptoms so much. If you take molybdenum on its own, you're going to drain vitamin B6, you're going to drain zinc, vitamin C so fast. That's why most people get really bad symptoms taking molybdenum on its own. When you've got all these vitamins in your system, it balances out those negatives so people can take 10, 15 times the amount of molybdenum that they normally used to, which we have several examples in the forum of people expressing that. I could never handle more than 500 micrograms of molybdenum, and now I'm able to handle 10 milligrams. It's crazy. And so being low on molybdenum it causes a surge of free, or it's basically saying that you have too much free copper stimulating your body, and that free copper is an aggressor. It is and like you said, an adrenaline booster kind of, and it just you're in a hyper adrenalized state or hyper stimulated state, and anger comes with that because you're so on edge. You feel like you're both stimulated and having withdrawals at the same time is what it feels like.
Okay. And clammy hand. What does clammy mean? I thought that meant cold and sweaty. Is that what that?
Yeah, clammy. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. Cold, sweaty. Not the excessive cold hands can be misleading, so I try not to use that as the only symptom.
So it's the and sweaty that's key then.
It's the sweatiness, the fingertips look kind of sweaty, and you feel a little cold, clammy.
What about sweaty feet? Is that
Sweaty
the same
feet,
category?
bottoms
Is
of
that
the
different?
feet. I find that's actually more low zinc or more low vitamin C. That taking vitamin C or zinc usually fixes the sweaty bottoms of the feet for me. And it depends on how severe it is, because sometimes it's also meaning you have too much iron and you need to take more EGCG and C and zinc. But I can almost guarantee that those who do have the sweaty bottoms of the feet, they are low zinc, but zinc might not correct the issue immediately. You have to do a few dosages of this to get to the point where that fixes.
Well, I'll testify to that. I've had sweaty feet for over 20 years, and I've been having a lot of zinc, and it has not resolved yet. But I give it time. One other one I wanted to ask you about before we go to the next one is the left side stomach pain. So this is an interesting one to me because I've you've got that as number 3 as well now, like pain on the left side. So I wanted to offer a distinction here because I think I saw somewhere else you said that acid reflux is a sign of low molybdenum. Did I remember that correctly?
Whatever that name is, I always forget the name of this, but whenever, you know how like it'll feel like a burning sensation in your throat. And
Yeah, acid reflux or GERD, they sometimes call that.
yeah. So that is low molybdenum almost all the time, or low biotin, one of the two. I don't know why.
So I want to say from my experience, like the left side pain, because I sometimes get like discomfort, like IBS, it's just gas, and so sometimes that's on the left side. I do not think that means I need more molybdenum because I've tried it and it doesn't do anything. But like for quite a while now, I've not been having molybdenum. We'll talk about that later. But then just recently, I started having like a little bit of refluxy symptoms sometimes late again. I was like, oh, that's weird. I haven't had this for a while. And then I checked and it's like, oh, I need molybdenum again. And so I can affirm that from my experience, I don't think that placebo effect, 'cause I've completely forgotten about it. So for that left side pain, I would say it's more, for some people, it's just obviously left side pain, but it's especially when you have reflux or, burping, stomach acid or burning esophagus or anything like that, right?
Yeah. And the left side pain is also the right and left side pains are very tricky, and they can really throw you for a loop because you could be low EGCG and get either side pain, but you'll often, if you have those side pains, it's usually need all three. I found you just need all three: more zinc, EGCG, and molybdenum. And so I've just started recommending you do a dose of all three if you start getting those, unless you're a low copper individual, like you tend to be not nearly as necessary or you tend to not need nearly as much molybdenum as most people that I'm recommending this to.
These days, absolutely true, yeah. All right, well, let's go to the second one. So this is signs of low zinc. And so the list is red oily fingertips, depression, red lips, nausea, thinning hair in front, gut pain or right side pain, lower back pain, loss of appetite, testicular pain, acidic diarrhea or light-colored stool. So that's an interesting list. I want to ask you about a few of those. So the recommendation for that is 100 milligrams of zinc plus 1.5 milligrams of molybdenum. And so you always recommend taking molybdenum with zinc or EGCG, right? Except for in very unusual cases like mine. So yeah, can I ask you about some of those symptoms? Okay, so nausea. So this is the one I find the funniest. So nausea is a symptom of both high copper, meaning you need molybdenum, and low zinc in your system. I think you're the first person I ever met who, if you have nausea, they say, take more zinc. And honestly, I have not ever had an experience where that works for me, but I know that you have, and I know that a bunch of other people have. So it's very interesting.
The reason
Tell
why
us.
you probably haven't gotten that is because I recommend the lower amount of EGCG with you or with most people online. And so I always take an excessive amount of EGCG, and so zinc always fixes my nausea. But maybe people just are taking a lesser amount of EGCG, and that actually is what's causing the nausea, is the lower amount of EGCG. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, I think whatever I've not got to the level where I've had too much EGCG, we can put it that way. Yes, so that's interesting. Okay, so for some people, of course, they could get to that level where they've had too much EGCG. So in that case, the zinc fixes the nausea. That's what you're saying, right? Yeah, very interesting. Okay, and gut pain or right side pain, we've kind of covered that a little bit already. Lower back pain is an interesting one. Tell me about the connection between that and low zinc.
So I actually think it's not directly low zinc that's causing it. It's more of a high copper thing, because if your copper levels get too high, your calcium starts to get leached and your kidneys start to develop stones. And that lower back pain is like the first sign of a stone forming, I think, because every time I got that lower back pain, 3 weeks later, I would have a really bad stone attack. Before people are terrified, if you correct the balance of nutrients, I've found, and not one person has come to me and said they've had a stone yet. Thank goodness. But the operator did get close, and a couple other people actually got close. And I was like, okay, just do the formula without EGCG. That's all that needs to be done, because that's basically a sign that you have taken too much EGCG. And you need to take a lot more zinc, but taking zinc alone is going to cause that copper to try and flush out. So you need the molybdenum, and then you need the Bs to balance all that, and the C. It's a whole thing. So when you get to that point, don't do the formula with more EGCG, so that you can get rid of basically nothing but copper and leave the iron intact.
Okay, I'm a bit confused by that. So it's not a sign of low zinc, it's a sign of too much copper, but you still recommend
Well,
taking
it
zinc.
is low zinc, but because copper has built up, that's leaching calcium from your tissues and bones, and it's that slow leaching of calcium causes stones to form, is what I'm theorizing. But being simply low zinc, I don't think causes that same effect. I think it's the buildup of copper that is causing that.
But if the buildup of copper is causing that, and your usual solution to build up of copper is just taking molybdenum, why zinc as well then, in this case?
Oh, because zinc and molybdenum are both required to get rid of copper. Molybdenum will get rid of what's been pushed out and surfaced and free. Zinc kind of pushes it out and makes it free and surfaced. If that's
Okay, I see. Right. So the first protocol of just taking molybdenum is when the copper is newly freely floating around.
You've taken enough zinc to keep it. Like, his zinc acts in my theory is zinc acts like a repellent of copper. It's repelling it from the tissues, and zinc that repelling of that copper is what pushes it to the detox areas with vitamin C. They're working together. That's why a lot of health formulas often get a lot of success combining vitamin C and zinc together in their formulas, is because they're both working together to push that copper in maybe a little bit different ways. But I would say zinc prevents the copper from going back into the tissues. The C is what pushes it in the blood.
Okay, but you're not recommending C in this situation, the lower back pain?
No, because at this point, if you've taken the full standard dose, you should have plenty of C in your body already.
Okay, it's the zinc and molybdenum you need more of. Okay.
Because with formula, you're taking like 10,000% of the vitamins that the recommended daily amount recommends, except for biotin, which is like 10,000,000%. No, it's like 220,000. I don't remember. I have to look again, but
Something like that, yeah.
But the other B vitamins, C, B6, and B5, those are at like 10,000% of your recommended amounts, I believe. Something close to that.
Yeah, we talked about it in the last episode. I think we worked it all out. Okay, and then depression's the last one I'm interested in. Tell me how that relates as an immediate symptom to low zinc.
I don't know how, but for whatever reason, when I'm low zinc, it's like I don't know if you want to call it a dopamine lack of production or
It
whatever.
might be, yeah.
But the lack of zinc is causing something to not produce, some sort of hormone, enzyme, something that creates happiness in the body. When you're really low zinc, like really, really low zinc, and when I say low zinc, what I mean is you have a lot of storage space for it that isn't being filled. There are people that are plenty. I think everyone's low zinc in the world is what I think, but because their storage places are filled with iron, that lack that empty feeling doesn't quite exist. Whereas if there's no iron, nothing in that receptor site, you get this like empty, like a literal empty feeling, like something should be in you that's not. I don't know how to describe it, and it results in depression. You get
Yeah,
really
interesting.
bad.
Very interesting. Okay, and then the last one. So this is a need for EGCG, which you see as a sign of excess iron and possibly an excess of other heavy metals as well, right? As you say, you're not sure. All right, so the list is extreme cold or hot hands and or feet. Nausea again, so it's actually a symptom of all three. But that's the point. Like generally, if you need calibration, it starts with nausea, right? That's why it's in all
But
three.
yeah, if you're not feeling nauseous, you have no reason to think to calibrate. It's like it's a very motivating factor to fix.
So is that so? If I just get cold hands but I don't have nausea, do I not calibrate? Like
If you have really cold hands, like I find that a little bit of EGCG helps a lot. The nausea is usually either low molybdenum or low zinc, but the problem is those don't work if you need EGCG. So it's not that necessarily if you're nauseous you just need EGCG. It's that you need one of the other two usually, but they won't absorb. So you need more EGCG to let them absorb. For your case, you may very well just need a ton of EGCG. I don't know.
it seems to. Yeah, we'll talk about me in a bit. Okay, so sorry, I interrupted my own flow there. So I'll carry on. Hair thinning and oily, headache, but not migraine. Being gassy, so I guess IBS kind of stuff would go in there. Right, left side pain, yellow eyes, dark circles under eyes, insomnia, widening of the lining of the mouth, itchy scalp, feeling full and bloated in the stomach, shaky hands, endless diarrhea. I assume that's hyperbolus. And constipation. All right, so I have a question about quite a few of these. So let's see, headaches, not migraine. Well, I guess I've just got a suggestion in this regard. So I was having sinus issues for a while with this, and I found EGCG helped. Did we talk about this last time? I think a lot of the time people have headaches, they don't realize that there's a sinus component to it.
That might be my sinuses that's affected, and I just don't know to call it my sinuses because it's usually here.
It's right in the head, right?
Yeah, that's right here.
Right. Okay. So that may well be a sinus thing as well. So some people call it a headache. Some people like me call it a sinus issue. So either way.
And it is very important to distinguish between migraines and headaches because migraines, that's like a pain that's usually like behind the eyes. It's a drilling pain. And that is the exact opposite of what taking EGCG will make that way, way worse. Way worse. And so if you get to that point, you usually need to do a dose without EGCG if you got the migraines and then higher doses of biotin and molybdenum. That usually clears it up. I suspect it has something to do with high copper levels. But yeah, the front headache, the whatever you want to call it, sinus headache, that's definitely a sign, at least from almost every person I've talked to on this, that you do need more EGCG. Yourself is a great example. Every time you get that and you just take more EGCG, you tend to feel a little bit better after 30 minutes or so?
It tends to work. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how quickly, but it does absolutely work. Yeah. Okay, so what else do I want to focus on? Yeah, gassy is interesting. So I'd say that's one of the areas where things have got the most better for me, though it's kind of up and down. But, I've had these IBS kind of symptoms for a very, very long time. They used to be really, really bad, really painful, much less even before I started this, like quite minimal. But still, it's got way better doing this. And I've noticed, some speculation in the forum, like some people have their whole theories about how a lot of the benefit of this, not really that they're arguing that it has these effects on metals, because it obviously does, but what about the effects it has on the digestive tract? So EGCG is quite a potent killer of lots of different organisms. It's also a biofilm disruptor, meaning that, a lot of the time bacteria and other organisms hide behind this biofilm that stops antibiotics or your own immune system from being able to get at them. And then zinc, is a killer of organisms. Copper is a killer of organisms. Iron is a feeder of organisms. And so it's quite interesting that this thing that maybe takes away the food source, the iron, disrupts. Oh, and it also is EGCG is a quorum sensing disruptor. And what that means is that these organisms are all kind of communicating with each other in various different ways, and EGCG gets in the way of that and disrupts all that. So I know one of the benefits you had was digestive, right? You said you were able to eat a lot more foods.
I wanted to add to that is what I found interesting, and I can't recall the exact source of this, but isn't it true that cancer cells also feed on iron and copper? I don't want to make any claims here, but I think if you're trying to get rid of iron, this is probably one of the better ways to do it. And so it would be interesting to see if this had a positive effect on things like cancer, but I obviously don't have any cancer patients to test that on. But it'd be interesting to know if cancer really was helped by this extreme chelation of iron. And so,
it would be interesting, but I won't go into that much more because of the compliance things. Go back to digestion because that's safe to talk about. So gassy, because gassiness it's seen as like a no big deal in Western culture. It's like, take an antacid or whatever. But in Eastern medicine, like in traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about these different evil winds that attack the body and cause disease. And, a lot of it, like they see this gas inside you as much more of a big deal. And it's interesting that, Western science, I think in the last 10 years, have discovered what they're now calling, I think, the gaseous nervous system. So they've worked out that the gases inside you are not just, causing burps and farts and discomfort. They're also like there's this whole intricate communication network going on with the gases, and they actually have a really big impact on the whole body and the nervous system, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So do you think that part of the benefit that people are experiencing this formula, including you, may be that the EGCG is like reducing the level of bad bacteria, it's removing the food from the bad bacteria, it's disrupting the hiding place of the bad bacteria? Have you thought about all of that?
Well, if it was just affecting the food that I eat and making me feel better, I don't feel like I would be.
No one's saying just, but I'm saying is this one of the levels that it's working on?
Oh, maybe. Like I wouldn't be surprised at all. I honestly just believe that the main problem in everyone is the heavy metal piece of it, and that heavy metal piece is what allows bad bacteria to thrive. So the metals is kind of like the cause versus the symptom. And the bacteria is like the symptom versus the cause in my mind. That's my theory. I'm
more inclined to agree with you, but I'm bringing it up because, there's a big, like functional medicine is a big thing in the alternative world. And they really have this belief that all disease is rooted in the gut. And their big thing is, like restoring healthy microbiome and all of this kind of stuff. So it's a lot of people.
That's a result of increased zinc levels in the body, the gut health. And so, yes, they might be right. But there's one more piece to it. There's one more level that they haven't reached yet, and that is, yes, the gut is the base of it all, but zinc is the base of the gut. So that's my theory.
And it may well be the case because, this is something like all this focus in functional medicine on gut health, but I've always felt like if the immune system is really healthy, genuinely healthy, then a lot of these things, and cancer, which I won't talk about, but generally cancer is a lack of an optimal immune system. That's.
Can we say on here safely that there is research to say that cancer is more aggressive in those with poor DNA health?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if this protocol attempts to help with DNA health, I mean, that might explain iron toxicity might be a contributing factor to some things like some issues. I don't know.
Damaging DNA potentially if it's high enough. Yeah, I think that's a safe thing to say, given that iron is considered a free radical at excess levels. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if iron is just the connecting piece of all of this, and that just getting rid of it is the reason. I mean, like that's why this is the Holy Grail, is this is able to get rid of so much iron, which is breaking everything in the body. And then and zinc is repairing it. And so Again, the problem with doing any kind of research on this is no one has ever been able to take 300 milligrams, more than 300 milligrams of EGCG a day without getting really sick. We're taking like 3,000 a day.
I don't think it's 300, but yeah, it's not. I think 400 is the amount that they consider like the safe limit. That's normally the amount they're allowed to, recommend in a supplement. But yeah, we will talk about the amount people are taking very soon. I just want to finish this list, and we'll definitely go to that because that is very interesting. All right, just a couple more. So dark circles under eyes. How is that caused by excess iron or lack of EGCG? Any idea?
I would say because of the excess iron, your B vitamins aren't working correctly. And anemia is a combination of or it can be many things. Being anemic doesn't necessarily mean you're low iron. In fact, it can be the opposite. It can be your excessive iron and your iron's not able to metabolize properly because the B and C's aren't working correctly. I don't know if I can speak on that with certainty, meaning I don't know if there's enough evidence for me to state that factually, but that's what my suspicion is that the excess iron is not allowing your B12 to work correctly, for example, or your B6 or your vitamin C. And so because of that, you are going anemic in a way, and that anemia is what causes that.
Interesting.
I had it really bad when I started this. Now they're not so bad.
You look better even than the last interview, but as you said, you were really working ridiculously long hours.
I was really tired last time.
Yeah. Okay, so widening of the lining of the mouth. How would I even know if that is or isn't happening? What does that mean?
When this starts feeling like really like your lips start feeling thin and it feels really stretched along the lining. I don't know what that is, but if you do this formula, you'll know what I mean, especially if you're a higher copper individual. I think it's something to do with the copper excretion, but
Is it like you're just more prone to cracked lips or something like that?
I don't know. I don't know how to describe it to you. It's I thought it was a more well-known thing, but let me see. Like, okay, so you see my lips here, right? Like they're just normal.
Okay.
Now, if I do this, like the state in which you are resting, like the lips like widen and your lips thin out. Like, I don't know how.
Wow. Okay.
I can't explain it. It's too hard.
There'll be people watching or listening going, what the hell is he talking about? But there'll also be, but there'll be people watching and listening going, what is Elwin talking about?
There's two groups. There's one who knows what I'm talking about and one who have no idea.
So, okay, fair enough. I'll have to let that one go.
Copper people who will know what I'm talking about. You're not part of it anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Itchy scalp. What's the connection there? Any idea?
I don't know what that is. I mean, I think it feels, I mean, this is just a feeling. It feels like calcium is building up in the follicles or something because they feel plugged up. They feel plugged up with it, whether it's pus or whether it's like just an inflammation of the follicles themselves, but they feel like constrained. And that causes like an itchy feeling. Your scalp gets often very flaky with that. And if you're high iron, you get more of that dandruffy flakiness. But if you're low biotin, it just starts itching like crazy. And you can feel like low biotin while you're high iron because, like I said, iron kind of blocks B vitamins and vitamin C from working. And so when you're high iron, you kind of get all the symptoms of low B vitamins because they're not working. And so you get this really itchy scalp. Like you'll often see me scratching my scalp. It's because I almost always have high iron in my blood because I'm doing such high doses of this formula. It's like constantly surging more iron in. So I have to go and recalibrate every couple of hours. Yeah, I do that because I'm a daredevil and I want to just see how far this goes. I'm not in any particular need to do it anymore. It's just I keep feeling better and better. Why stop?
And speaking of being plugged up, this is the last one, constipation. So that's always been my tendency, which again, I guess affirms what you were saying about the me being a high iron type.
Yep. And using constipation as a symptom though, because it can be constipation can be anything. And so I really hate using that.
So why have you put it then?
That's most commonly associated with high iron.
What
Very occasionally it can be low B6, it can be low vitamin C, and often it is low vitamin C. Like that high iron is stopping your C from working, and that combo of the two is causing constipation. Now, if you have like pale stool and really hard constipation, hard stool and pale stool, that's usually low C. But if you have like dark, thick stool, that's usually low biotin or low EGCG. So your iron's too high usually. But
Okay.
the constipation is a hard one. I just usually associate that with too much iron because that one's like, if you are too high iron, eventually you will always go constipated. Always.
Right. And you also put endless diarrhea next to it. So
That too, because if you take vitamin C, that C gets your body way too acidic. And so you just won't stop having diarrhea.
Right, okay. Okay, well, let's talk about these high doses that some people are taking, that you're taking, and then we'll look at my test results. So now, this is definitely not medical advice. You're only sharing this because, as you said, it's quite interesting what is even possible. So what's the kind of amounts that you're regularly taking, and what's the most you've taken?
I am taking the standard protocol that's on the forum, which is 200 milligrams of B6, 500 milligrams of B5, roughly 500 milligrams of biotin. I can't give you a precision amount on that because I always take enough in the under the tongue to where it stops dissolving quickly, which I estimate to be around 500 milligrams. I'm taking around 7,500 milligrams of vitamin C. I'm taking about 2,600 milligrams of EGCG, and then 6.5 milligrams of molybdenum.
And
I
zinc?
think that's everything.
I'm not sure if you
Zinc,
said zinc.
200 milligrams of zinc.
200
No,
milligrams.
it's okay. So 200 milligrams. But then 5 minutes later, after doing this, I will do another round of 100 milligrams of zinc, 2.5 milligrams or 3 milligrams of molybdenum, and then another 650 or 700 milligrams of EGCG. I'm going off of the capsules because they're standardized to like 45%. So I'm trying to do the math in my head there. It's like each capsule is something around 250 milligrams per capsule, 275. So I'm going off the number of capsules.
Are you talking about the life extension ones?
No, I'm talking about the
No,
Horbach.
okay.
I take the Horbach brand that's on Amazon. It's
Okay, fair enough. Sorry, I thought you were doing life extension. Okay.
No,
okay.
I recommend life extension because I know that one works, but I take the Horbach because it's stronger, and I don't usually recommend the stronger one to newcomers because it's a little bit scary. But I do take that one.
All right, so that's what you're taking is pretty much what you're asking other people to take at the moment. So fair enough. And what's the most that you've ever done?
Well, it depends. I mean, if we want to talk about like a consistent amount that I've done, the most I've done.
No, let's say in one day.
In one day, I've done 4 times the standard protocol, and I've posted now in one day the higher dose. So, no, I've taken up towards of a gram of zinc, so that would be 5 times. So 5 times the protocol in one day.
And I think you told me that people are taking as much as 30 grams of EGCG. Is that right?
Yeah, and we have one guy who's doing it right now who's taking that pretty regularly because he has such high iron levels we're finding, and it's working for him. Like, I don't recommend that to anybody, but he's did it on his own, and it's working for him. But do not take 30 grams of EGCG to start out. If you can work your way up to it on your own and you decide you want to do that, I mean, that's on you. But I do not recommend that.
People are doing stuff all the time, right? They're doing ketamine, they're doing fentanyl, they're doing whatever. People have the right to make their own decisions.
Yep. If you don't get that balance just right and you take that number of EGCG, usually you will, I mean, like 99% of the time, taking even a third of that without the balance would give me a kidney stone. So I don't recommend that.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, and I'll share what I'm doing. So I am doing the formula most days these days, more than I was before. I'm sometimes doing Jacob's higher dose, but I'm often doing like half the amount. Um, and the reason is just because for me doing a higher amount, it basically I have less symptoms when I do less, but I do understand what Jacob is saying about the higher amount creating less symptoms. In fact, sorry, let me have you explain that, Jacob, before I explain my experience with it. So why are you recommending a higher amount, and why are you saying it creates less symptoms in people?
I'm recommending the higher amount because it's not perfect. And because it's not perfect, you're going to have to be a little experimental. And it's much easier to narrow it down to what the issues are to the minerals if you do excessive dosages of the vitamins, because those are much safer to do excessively. Those aren't going to, the vitamins themselves, as long as you, except maybe B6, but as long as you keep the balance of these vitamins, usually they shouldn't cause too much issue. They'll pee out eventually. They're water soluble. The minerals will do an extraordinary amount of damage if you take too much on their own. Your body needs those vitamins to balance out and absorb those minerals properly. Otherwise, they just kind of thrash around in the body and start tearing you up from the inside out. For some reason, the B6 team and the biotin and the B5 and the C, they all seem to mitigate all of that. I mean, you could probably tell me from experience that you've had bad negative effects from much smaller amounts of zinc, feeling like it's thrashing you up from the inside out. I mean, if you've ever tried to take that much zinc on its own, and there's a lot of people on the forum who will tell you that without taking molybdenum, for example, they got that left side pain. So again, the balance is really important here. But the point is without the vitamins, with the high level of vitamins, taking a small amount of zinc will deplete your B6 so much that you'll get B6 deficiency symptoms really quick. And that's really hard to diagnose when you have to be much more precise with those vitamins. Like it becomes a goose chase between all 7 nutrients, whereas on the higher doses, it's a goose chase between the 3, EGCG and molybdenum and zinc.
Can you explain this concept of drip drain that you?
Yeah. So if you don't take if you take just a little bit too low of a vitamin or a particular nutrient in this formula, if you let's say your body needed 200 milligrams and you were taking 175, you wouldn't be experiencing any major issues to begin with, but over time, like the amount, your zinc levels, your zinc needs would slowly, like your zinc amounts will slowly drop, and you'll start to get slower realizations of symptoms like, the best one is like biotin. People start to slowly experience a realization of anxiety, gut pains, oversleeping, over hungry. It doesn't happen right away, but suddenly you realize, man, I'm just not feeling full anymore. My hair's starting to feel a little bit itchier. Low C and low molybdenum are other good ones, because the low molybdenum drip train usually is the shin itching, the legs itching. That's when you're just barely too low molybdenum for too long. Whereas if you're quickly, if you are severely low on a nutrient, your body will just get nauseous and throw up really quick because it doesn't want to continue the process anymore because you're far too low. If you're just a little bit too low, it'll allow the process to happen kind of while robbing you of that little amount of that nutrient that you need. That's what I mean by drip train, is that robbing your body of that little amount, that little extra amount that it wants to continue the process. If that gap is too much, you don't have nearly enough, your body's going to be like, nope, not going to do it. Blah, throw up.
And I had not thrown up before. My first time throwing up was doing this high dose of nutrients.
Sorry.
But it wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the 5th time. It was, after a while. And it goes to what you said, which I think it is actually true, that I only discovered, and I know it's subject to change and will keep changing, but I only discovered the right balance of things for me by having the higher amounts and then having the negative symptoms, which were not noticeable when I had lower amounts. So I have to admit, actually, I didn't run this by you, but one of the other reasons I don't do the higher dose more often is because I don't like to do it with my last meal, because I have my last meal not long before I eat, and I don't like to, it's still quite a lot of caffeine with the amount of EGCG that I have, even the decaf version. So I tend to have it for my second meal. But I notice if I have the large dose with my second meal, I'm just not hungry, and so often then I don't want to eat a third meal, and I'm trying not to skip meals. Any recommendations in that regard?
No, there are no recommendations, because this formula kills appetite, and I mean it kills it. And not in like bad. Well, I mean it's a disappointing way when you want to eat more because it's delicious and you want to enjoy it, but it doesn't
It's just I have a history of being underweight, so I try not to skip meals for that reason as well. Yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, this formula, despite me not Maybe because I eat so crappy. I eat little amounts. I eat crappy, but I eat little amounts. I graze throughout the day, and I haven't really gained or lost weight. Like, I feel like I'm losing fat and gaining muscle and bone density. So like, it doesn't feel like I'm getting lighter, but it feels like I'm getting stronger. And even though I'm not really eating much at all, like I eat maybe one full meal a day, probably.
So for me, that's a downside. To a lot of people watching, though, that may be an upside, that it has that effect on appetite. You feel very satiated. So that's something to be aware of as
And it
well.
has no negative effect on energy too. Like I'm totally fine. More energy than I've ever had. The only thing is like, I wouldn't say it makes you less hungry. I would say makes your body want to consume the exact amount of calories it needs for the day, is what I would say. We're so used as human beings to consuming probably more calories than we're actually using. And it's become the norm because we're also low biotin, I think. And it's just not, it's what causing our appetites to be over excessive. Now that we're consuming massive amounts of biotin, our body's like, I don't really need all these calories. I don't need to eat. I've got the nutrients I need now. Like that's, I believe that is part of hunger is your body's survival mechanism saying, I need a nutrient. Could be a macronutrient, could be a micronutrient. If you're really overweight, odds are I would bet you probably don't need a lot of macronutrients. I think you need a lot of micronutrients.
Yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of the time. I think for me, it's just my body is like dealing with a lot of stuff and it doesn't want more food. I've just got a delicate, appetite, whereas most people it's the opposite. It is what it is. Okay, so that's my experience. I have been my digestion, despite what I just said about the appetite, has been better and better in terms of like not having any IBS symptoms, not having any discomfort, all of that kind of stuff has been great. My stress resilience has been higher and higher.
Have you had any colds recently?
Nope, but to be honest, I don't get them anyway. If I were to get anything, it would be like a digestive thing, which I haven't had.
I was going to say, since I've started doing this 3 years ago, I haven't had one common cold. Like it hasn't happened with me or my girlfriend. So
Yeah, I think me neither, but yeah, not because of the formula. I think I've had one since 2019, or whatever. But I had digestive like issues, upsets. That's if I had anything, I'd have that. I think for some people it shows up in the respiratory system. Some people it shows up in the digestive system. Different people, when they're weak, it shows up in different places. But anyway. I think sometimes I really have a feeling like my dopamine is higher, to go back to the dopamine thing, which I think actually might be really replenishing the B6, having much higher doses of B6 than I've ever had before, which is interesting. And I think I know what you mean about the colds. I think like before, like my wife thought she was getting ill, and normally I'd be like, okay, just stay away from me until we're sure if you are or not. And like recently, I just wasn't bothered. I was like, no, I'm fine. I know I'm going to be okay. There's like a confidence in your own immunity, which I think I've had. My sex drive has been higher. I've still been waking up at night, which is annoying, and I often wake up with an erection, which I know a lot of guys think that's great, and I just find it annoying because it means if I need to pee, I got to wait.
it's annoying for me because my girl, and she lives across the world. So
Right. And my wife and I are in a different sleep schedule and we don't sleep in the same bed. So, yeah, not that she'd probably like me waking her up in the middle of the night anyway, for that reason, on a practical level. So, yeah, it is what it is. What else? I think mood has been better, like you described, is quite stoic. And I think to be honest, I used to be in a lot more of an emotional roller coaster than I have been in the last few months. I think as the copper has cleared, I feel much more level-headed, much less likely to get angry or frustrated or anxious or all these kind of things. Although I've had my moments, but I've been able to identify them as part of this process, treat them, and then get rid of them. Um, what else? I think, some people have been telling me I've been looking better. You're one of them, but you might be biased. There are other people, including my wife, including friends, uh, colleagues,
you have to have a
some
group of people in your
clients.
school that you don't see more than once every 6 months, and then when you see them, they'll be like, "Oh my gosh!" But if you see someone every day, they might not notice right off the bat.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, yeah. Um, So that's some things. I might remember some other stuff, but let me share some test results, which I think could be of interest to people. Oh, we're going to make an announcement before that. So a lot of people have been hassling Jacob about test results. He's not keen because he feels like a lot of test results are misleading, like all the standard medical ones, which I understand and I have sympathy for that view because they are only a snapshot of time and they change a lot. But yeah, sorry, I'm kind of leading here. Do you want to make your announcement, Jacob?
Yeah, Elwin has suggested, and I agree, that it'd be a good idea to do one of those. What was the proper name for those?
DNA methylation.
DNA methylation tests, just to really kind of solidify that I'm not killing myself here.
And it's more than that, like Jacob shares with me quite, he feels like he's, anti-aging his DNA and all the rest of it. And I said, let's prove it. Like there is a test that's considered by mainstream science to be the most reliable indicator of how much your DNA is aged. It's called a DNA methylation test. Are you open to doing that? And he said, yeah, why not? It is much less of a snapshot and much more of a, like a broad, how are you doing overall? You're the age you are. It might say you're 10 years, like your cellular aging shows that you're 10 years younger than you should be or 10 years older than you should be. It also tells you the pace at which you're aging, all of this kind of stuff. So you're going to do that in a couple of months. You have a protocol in mind that you're doing for a period of time, right? And when that's complete, you're going to do that test and then you'll share it first on this podcast?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. All right. So that's exciting. So all the people are like, oh, why are you not testing yourself? We're
like you said, I look better from even just from our last interview, I look already better. And that's because I wasn't doing my protocol for some time. And I guess I doing the new job, I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't doing the protocol. And I started right back up on it as soon as I got things leveled out. And lo and behold, I'm much calmer and not as wired.
You definitely looked tired last time, but I think this is one of the things, and I've observed this as well. Like I have been really pushing myself for the last 10 days for various circumstantial reasons. And I think it's a level I wouldn't have done before because I just wouldn't have had the resilience for it. I would have just said, sorry, I'm going to have to cancel this, I'm going to have to not do that. And I've just pressed ahead and done it. So I can imagine that you had the same thing at probably a higher level. Where, by the sound of it, you were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day and all the rest of it. And we're all still human. We all have our limits.
In an ideal world, you'd meet all of your nutritional needs in the form of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and more from the foods you eat. However, unless you prepare all of your food at home from scratch using the highest quality ingredients possible, the reality is that most of us need some nutritional support. Most of us need to take supplements if we want to look, feel, and perform at our best on a consistent daily basis. And this is especially true if you have genes that give you an elevated need of certain nutrients. And this is where Feel Younger can help. What I love about Feel Younger is that they offer a huge range of quality supplements and healthcare products formulated and endorsed by Elwin Robinson, including must-haves like magnesium glycinate and vitamins B12, D3, and K2. And they do it at affordable prices with free shipping for orders over $50 without ever compromising on quality, purity, or potency. To learn more about how Feel Younger supplements can give your health a boost while supporting this podcast, please visit feelyounger.net and use promo code REJUVENATE to get 20% off your first order. That's promo code REJUVENATE for 20% off your first order at feelyounger.net.
I was building a system for my new job and, I kind of got deep in the weeds of it and I didn't want to stop until it was done. And I finally got it done. So
awesome. Okay. So yeah, let's, all right. So let's talk about zinc for a second. So I've been doing this protocol. I started off for a few weeks at the beginning, which was January 2025. I kind of had some negative symptoms when I did the EGCG, so I decided to do it without at a low-ish dose, I think about half of what the current one is. And for about 2 to 3 weeks, I just felt good doing that. And then eventually I felt like I no longer felt good. And then I started adding in the EGCG. And then I've ended up now, and obviously this is subject to change, but for now, I do pretty much the protocol that Jacob just said, but just with a bunch of extra EGCG. So Sometimes I will do as much as 4 grams of EGCG, sometimes 2 grams, depending on if I'm doing a full dose or a half dose. And also, I'm doing very little molybdenum. In fact, for quite a while, I was doing none. And that's because I was basing my molybdenum need on my uric acid levels, and my uric acid levels are staying high. Actually, finally, literally in the last week, I was telling Jacob before we filmed, my uric acid levels started to drop, and sure enough, some of those signs of what he identifies as needing molybdenum or high copper symptoms came right back again, like the acid reflux that I mentioned earlier. So I started taking molybdenum again, and everything's good. My anecdotal experience, by the way, is that you really want to keep your uric acid levels at the top of that normal reference range. I feel a lot better when they're at the top of the range, and this makes sense because uric acid is actually a potent antioxidant, which, if I am a person with high iron, then, which is an oxidant, then it would make sense that I feel good keeping that uric acid, which is an antioxidant, at high levels in my blood. All right, so here's some test results. Jacob has not seen these either, so I'm showing them with him for the first time. So this is a lab test that I did, which is a special one based on Dr. Walsh. And so it's just so Dr. Walsh is the doctor I mentioned earlier who focuses on helping people's mental health with various things, primarily heavy metal detoxification as well as methylation balancing. And so there's kind of like 7 lab markers that he focused on. So I decided to do this because it contains zinc, it contains copper, it contains iron in a way, and it contains your ceruloplasmin, which is your level of free copper. So I wanted to do that to see, what my levels were. So this was from, you can see, 19th of February. So that's pretty much 3 months ago at the time of filming this. And so it also includes a couple of other things that Jacob's not really concerned with, like folate, B12, and vitamin D. So ignore those and we'll just focus on the other 4. So we can see that the ferritin was, not particularly high, and it actually never has been particularly high for me, which would go against Jacob's theory of me having high iron, except for ferritin is only a marker of your ability to store copper, and it often can indicate other stuff. I won't go into the whole thing about that, but I talked about that in an episode before with Dr. Miriam. But it can be an indicator of inflammation, can be an indicator of various other things. So it's not foolproof, but anyway, it's there. I do have a full iron panel, which I can share with you next. So I'm more sharing this one to look at zinc, copper, and ceruloplasmin, these 3 at the bottom. So you can see back in February, my zinc was, reasonably high, but not crazy high, near the top end. So if a normal practitioner saw this, they would say, this person doesn't really need zinc, right? Because it's near the top end of the reference range already. The copper was near the bottom end of the reference range already. And the ceruloplasmin was near the bottom end of the reference range. So what this means, I did this calculation earlier, but it means my free copper levels were reasonably high. I think about, 30%, but not crazy high. I've certainly seen a lot higher. And so if a normal person saw this, they would say, this person does not have too much copper. This person does not need more zinc. And except for maybe you need zinc because the free copper is a little bit high, but nothing particularly exceptional about it, okay? All right, so then I do this protocol for a long time. There would be a few things that one would worry about doing such high doses of zinc, which means that I could overdose on zinc, such high doses of molybdenum, because I might end up deficient in molybdenum, and such high doses of EGCG, because I might end up deficient in iron. All of those would be things that you might have heard people worry about, right, Jacob? So I did it for, as I said, these high doses most days for the 3 months. So here are my latest results. Okay, so yeah, this one was done like literally a week ago. You can see here, 14th of May. The reference ranges are different for reasons I won't bother going into, but we'll just look at the numbers. So worrying about the iron being lower. Well, you can see my iron has actually, or ferritin at least, has gone up as a result of doing this protocol. So this, and remember, I've had EGCG doses as high as 4 grams, and the iron has not gone down. It has, if anything, because ferritin can be an indicator of other stuff, it has, if anything, gone up. So indicating that potentially what Jacob said is right, that it was high, it was just hiding, right, in the tissues. And we've been taking it out. Number 2, after taking massive doses of zinc, as high as, more commonly, probably 150 milligrams, but as high as 350 milligrams, my zinc has gone down slightly. Now, you may say, well, Elwin, that doesn't mean anything. You're probably just peeing it out. Oh, really? Well, let me share with you what my zinc levels were like back a couple of years ago when I was taking just 50 milligrams a day on some days. Okay. So I was having about, let's say, 25% as much as I have been in the last 3 months. Have a look at what that did to my zinc levels back then. So this is a different looking test. This is my NutriVal. This is a NutriVal from the middle of 2023, so 2 years ago. Look at my zinc. It was off the reference range, 243. It was like way higher. So what does that mean? I would say it supports the idea of what Jacob's saying, that if you just take zinc, but you don't do anything else, maybe your body will just pee it out or sweat it out, or maybe it will accumulate in your blood, but it is not going where you actually want it to go. What's my evidence for that? Well, this, at least in my case, right? When I did at the most 50 milligrams a day, my zinc level shot up to being, almost twice the reference range. When I'm doing, let's say, an average of 200 milligrams a day, the level's actually gone down in the blood. So I think that's a very good indicator. The copper has actually gone up ever so slightly from what it was before.
Yep, not surprising to me.
And the ceruloplasmin, which is this thing that makes the copper actually usable and bioavailable rather than free, has also gone up. So my level of free copper has actually gone down slightly. So while if you look at these two test results, it basically looks like almost nothing has changed in 3 months. The iron has gone up a little bit, the zinc's gone down a little bit. That in itself is quite shocking when you consider what I've been up to.
But it proves, if nothing else, that you're not doing any noticeable damage to anything significant in terms of what they're testing for.
Well, I'm not causing myself zinc. So far, I agree, and I'll prove that more in my next test results that I'll share in a sec. But so far, what have we shown? I'm not causing myself to have an excess of zinc. I'm not causing myself to have a deficiency of copper, and I'm not causing myself to have a deficiency of iron. All the things that you would suspect with such high doses of these things, right?
So yeah, I mean, the main concerns that I get from most people is like, you're going to do so much damage taking all that zinc. You're going to destroy your liver. You're going to just, EGCG is known to produce all these liver enzymes that destroy your liver, and I've been doing this for a while. And I think the combo is really, negating that effect. But I don't really have any evidence yet to say that myself.
Yeah, well, okay. So let's look at my results for this. So this was done in 16th of April. So that's about a month ago. I actually did it again a week ago, Jacob, because I've been really hammering the high doses, especially the EGCG. So I wanted to test the liver again to make sure that nothing had changed. So I'll share that in a second. But yeah, so this was from a month ago when I'd already been doing this for quite a while at higher doses than most people ever would. So my kidney function was completely fine. Creatinine is not the best measure, but if anything, it had gone down since January when I started the protocol, which is a good thing. And the EGFR, it's not very. When I did a proper EGFR calculation, which took into account my height and weight, it was actually 130, which is a sign of basically good level of kidney function. But the liver is probably more what people would focus on because, as you just said, the EGCG and stuff. So all of my liver enzymes and bilirubin are, basically unchanged. So bilirubin's unchanged. You can see that. ALP up slightly, but it's been way higher before without any issues. ALT, it's up a little bit actually, but still right in the middle of the range. Really not an issue. The GGT, again, a bit higher than almost before, but still low range, not an issue at all. And then I'll just share the updated one that was a week ago. And this is based on, me really going for it with your higher doses on a lot of days and not taking many days off. With this one, and then we'll do my iron in a minute, but yeah, just to do liver for a second. So gamma GGT has actually gone down, I think. Yeah, it was 20 before. It's gone down to 17. ALT, 25. It was 26 a month ago. ALP, 43. It was 46 a month ago. So yeah, I think actually they've all gone down and improved. Bilirubin 6, it was 7.
It just makes me laugh because there's so many people that try to lecture me online about liver enzymes, and here we are. Proof is in the pudding.
But with at least one person, but am I like super strong? No, like I feel bad if I drink alcohol, for instance. It's not like my liver is impervious or whatever. So I don't want this to act like I have an iron liver or anything. That is not true. I do not. It is just that this is not toxic. If done correctly, at least in this n equals 1, case, right? At least for me.
And there are other people who have posted their liver enzyme, maybe like 1 or 2 on the forum, but there's reflecting similar things. Maybe if nothing else, mildly elevated for like a minute, and then they do it again and it's fine. I don't know. It really depends on the state you leave yourself in when you test yourself. Because the reason I don't trust those tests is because I think it's testing very surface level information. And that surface level, that balance of the blood is that what I'm talking about when I say surface level. Your blood's keeping a balance of these nutrients, and it wants an extreme balance of these nutrients. And even the slightest bit of an imbalance is going to cause symptoms. And so if you leave yourself imbalanced on this formula, if you take something too much of one thing and not enough another, you could get a false positive on something. And whereas if you correct that balance and go test again, it might not reveal itself to be a problem anymore. And I've experienced this with a couple people where they tested high on, I think one guy tested high on liver enzymes, and then he tested again later on after he corrected his balance, and his liver enzymes were fine. So the current balance that you're in plays a huge role in the results that you get. And so if you're imbalanced, it could tell you you're sick, and then you might be like, well, I'll never try this formula again, when really you just needed to take more molybdenum, for example, or EGCG.
Yeah, people have to see things in proportion as well. And that is especially, I love the people in that forum, but I think some of them, they over exaggerate like the risks of things a little bit. Because I sometimes work with and frequently talk to a medical doctor. She's a functional medicine doctor, but she's also a medical doctor. She's a GP in our NHS over here, so she understands the mainstream as much as it gets. Like, if one of your liver enzymes is significantly elevated once, an actual doctor would go, retesting retest in a few weeks. Like, it's not, they understand as well that it's not a big deal if it's transitory, if it's a persistent thing, or if it's extremely elevated. But liver enzymes can also go up, by the way, just because the person has an infection. Liver enzymes can go up for all kinds of other reasons. I once had it like is it ALT? Yeah, I was taking high doses of alanine because alanine's an amino acid and it helps keep blood sugar balance. So I was experimenting with that, and my ALT went up. And this happened to me when I went to the medical doctor. And they were like, oh, it's a bit elevated, we'll retest it, usual don't really care response that you get from medical doctors here. All I did is I stopped taking alanine. Next time they tested it, just went back to normal again. So it's like there's all these things that can raise it that aren't really meaningful as well.
Well, now, and I don't want to be deceitful here. If you do take molybdenum or EGCG on its own, like, yeah, you'll cause yourself major problems. And I did that to myself. I can tell you from experience, taking too much EGCG on its own for too long will probably make you more sick than you've ever been, than you've ever felt. So I'm not disputing what those people say. I'm just angry that they aren't willing to give it a shot. The concept of nutrients balancing each other to allow it, and I compare it to like electrolytes, because sodium on its own can dehydrate you or hydrate you depending on how you balance it with chloride or potassium or all the other electrolytes. Like electrolytes can deplete you of water and allow you to retain it better. It all depends on the balance. And that's the same concept I apply to these nutrients. They can make you sick or they can make you better. Just depends on how good you balance.
And the last thing I want to share is just my iron results. As you know, that's one of the things that we're working on. So this is from a month ago. I can see actual iron levels, pretty much at the top end of the range. So is this vast amount of EGCG causing iron deficiency? Nope. Total iron binding capacity is fine. Unsaturated iron capacity, so this is like, there's actually seems to be a slight lack of iron, but this is not something new. As you can see, it kind of shows up a little bit before, and it possibly affirms what you were talking about earlier, how when you have iron, sometimes it's not getting to where it needs to go. You can see every other marker, it seems to be high, but maybe it's not quite getting to where it needs to go, maybe because it's too high. But anyway, I mean, that's kind of a more a speculation. Ferritin, very low, and in every metric. So basically, not excessive, but not deficient either. And so from any medical point of view, now I may have a ton of it hiding in my tissues, as we speculated a lot about in this episode, but the point is, doing this protocol is not creating any kind of medical problem. And in fact, when I look at all my test results, when I have them evaluated by a medical doctor, she's like, great, you're doing better than ever.
I'm curious if you've done any levels testing on your testosterone levels, because I make a lot of claims that this helps with testosterone, but I still have yet to be able to prove that with actual metrics.
Yeah, but I was mine were skewed by the fact that I was using a little bit of testosterone cream, so it is really high. But it's a shame because the amount that I was using was so small. I mean, if you talk to any normal TRT person, they would laugh at you that this would have a significant impact, and it kind of didn't for me. Like, for instance, it's supposed to suppress sperm production. I did a fertility test. And my sperm was still, considered whatever, able to fertilize. So it's debatable how much of an impact it has, but still, I feel like it would be cheating to say it's high because this formula, because there was that confounding factor.
That's fair.
So I did cycle off it. And so after, because it, which was no big deal because it wasn't very much anyway. So I'd give it a few months and then test again, and we'll see if it's bounced back stronger. But for now, I can't really speak to that. What I can say is that the estrogen, it got even lower since I started. But I think I shared that before in a previous episode, so I won't go into that again.
You did say empirically that your drive feels a little higher, right? Like you're waking up with erections more.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, to be honest, I relate that more. So I've never had erectile dysfunction or whatever, but I have sometimes not had very high libido, despite having high testosterone and high DHT recently. And so I see that, if anything, is more related to dopamine. And so I've had a tendency for high prolactin, never high estrogen, but high prolactin. And so prolactin is a hormone that opposes dopamine. And funnily enough, one of the things that they recommend for fixing prolactin is B6. and I never was able to do very much B6 because I started to have negative effects, exactly like you talked about, because it's a nutrient on its own. So I suspect that the reason that might be coming back in the last month or so is because of I've been having such high doses of B6, because I wasn't having very high doses earlier on with the formula. I've been having, often either 100 or 200 milligrams a day, but I haven't retested that since. So I suspect that for me, that will be the lowered prolactin, meaning higher dopamine, as opposed to testosterone. But other people are different. I'm a little bit unusual in that regard. For men, it's more often it's high estrogen or low testosterone. I'm in a weird kind of third category where it's that high prolactin. I really don't see it often. I see a lot of people's test results. I rarely see prolactin high like mine, but there we go.
Yeah, if I had to take a guess, I would say this is less about producing more testosterone and more about keeping the testosterone that you do produce as testosterone is what I would say, because I feel like
it's staying as testosterone. In fact, that was the problem. My testosterone, the only reason I started taking the cream is because more of it converts to DHT. I was trying to create that effect. What was happening with me is that it was above the reference range as testosterone, and not enough of it was converting to DHT.
I'll revise what I'm saying by it prevents it from converting to estrogen. I think that's the bigger piece versus higher testosterone production is less estrogen production is my guess.
It definitely does that, and that's proven that zinc reduces aromatization, the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. So yeah, that's definitely the case. But I think the element that I'm pointing out here, which I think is probably significant to some degree, is the B6 and dopamine. That's really big as well. And I have to say, I've had some days where I felt like really amazing later in the day, especially after I've taken the formula sometimes, although not always, which I associate with high dopamine, having experimented with quite a lot of both illegal drugs, but also research compounds that no one has that raise dopamine. So I know exactly what it feels like to raise dopamine. And I think this formula is good in it. And I suspect, obviously it's everything, like always, but I wonder if the B6 might be a significant part of that, because B6 is known to lower prolactin and raise dopamine. So I think one of the many things I might have been really deficient in is B6. And I know that you consider B6 to be a really key part of this, right?
Yeah, it's a big driver.
You talk a lot about zinc and copper, but I think you feel like B6 is a key component as well,
I think
right?
B6 is what's doing all of the balancing of all the nutrients. I think B6 is what's going into the cells and pulling out what doesn't belong and then bringing in what does belong. I think it's part of all of that. And I think when you're low on B6, nutrients don't absorb well, because that B6 acts kind of like the Indiana Jones going to the temple, replacing the iron statue with a decoy or whatever. I think of B6 as like the Indiana Jones doing that switcheroo in the cells, and you got to do it just right. And without Indiana Jones, that switcheroo can't happen, for example, of replacing iron with zinc. And so I think it's a huge player, but the more you take, the more you have to take of everything else and have to get the balance just right. Because if you try to take too much B6 on its own, I believe it's pulling too much out. And your body's kind of not prepared for that, because it needs other nutrients to keep the havoc at bay when you do that, is the theory.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that's neuropathy and all that other symptoms, is because you've got all that metal in your blood.
And that's exactly why I didn't ever stick with doing B6, despite knowing that it could lower my prolactin, for the reason that you just said. Yeah, so I'm very happy. So I know for a lot of people, this formula is a way of taking zinc without being sick or whatever. But for me, I'm starting to realize this formula is a great way of me taking high doses of B6 without experiencing problems, which I've never been able to do before. So that's great.
And EGCG has numerous amounts of studies to say that it helps promote stem cell growth. It helps promote like the telomerase that I was talking about. Like all of these different things in the body that would scream longevity. No one can usually take, like I said, I probably said 4 times in this interview, no one has ever been able to take so much EGCG before. So that benefit is kind of not really utilized very well. Well, when you're able to take 3 grams at a time, that's why I'm theorizing it's the fountain of youth, is because you are able to produce all of these rejuvenating hormones. Like, I would be very curious to see my growth hormone levels. I don't know if there's an easy way to test for that. I haven't really researched anything about that, but I think I think seeing my growth hormone levels would be a good key indicator of whether what I'm saying is on point, because growth hormone plays a huge role in your youthful. Um, people hear growth hormone, they think big, bulky, but no, it's like a rejuvenating hormone. It keeps you young. At least that's what I know about it. Maybe I'm wrong. You
No,
probably.
it's controversial in the anti-aging space. Like a lot of people like taking growth hormone, and pretty much everyone agrees that they feel fantastic when they do. The controversy is around high growth hormone potentially leads to growth for things you don't want, like cancer, or like, over time it might enlarge the heart and stuff like that. But then if you're
Yeah, and to be
taking
clear, yeah. Sorry, to
no,
be
no,
clear, I'm not
no. I realize, but
hormones.
what I'm saying is, I know you're not talking about taking it exogenously, but what I am saying is, like, even when it's high naturally, there's kind of debate about whether that's a good thing for that reason. But what I would add to that is, isn't EGCG also helping to like apoptosis and stuff like that, like the breaking down and recycling of cellular tissue?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I don't know much about that piece of it. Like I said, I'd be curious to see.
I believe it is. So I wonder if that might actually be balancing it out, because that is obviously the problem with taking exogenous growth hormone, is you're not having something to like prune back the excessive growth. So maybe yeah, you can test it. Just to answer your question, generally people don't test growth hormone because it kind of pulses throughout the day, so it varies massively. But you test something called IGF-1 or insulin-like growth factor 1, and that's because basically growth hormone only works by raising IGF-1. IGF-1 is the thing that actually causes the benefits of growth hormone. So you can test that. That would be interesting.
I was really into natural growth hormone boosters, like in the supplement industry. I was really into things like maca root, really into L-Dopa, all these different supplements, macroprurians. I don't know how to say that correctly, but all these different supplements that are supposedly supposed to help your body produce more of that IGF-1 factor or whatever. I never really knew if those were working or not, but I will say that I did feel a little bit better on like things like Tribulus terrestris, which is a testosterone booster. So I do know that testosterone.
Tribulus is a very strong DHT booster, by the way, more than testosterone.
So anytime I took a testosterone booster, I definitely felt like a little of that drive and aggression, but growth hormone was hard to pinpoint. I felt just like better on some supplements, but I don't know if that was placebo or not. I definitely know HG7 is not a placebo.
Growth hormone is kind of like it's a feeling of ease, but it's a very subtle thing that I think you would notice because you're so aware of your body, but most people
I noticed
wouldn't.
feeling just like better, just in general, just like more awake. More awake is what I felt.
Yeah, and you're certainly more resilient to any kind of physical damage. Obviously, like stuff heals more quickly and stuff. Okay, well, I think that was another action-packed episode. So thank you for sharing your latest insights. Thank you for being willing to be grilled a little bit about the calibration stuff. I hope it's helpful for people who've had the same questions. I hope it's also been reassuring to people and by the way, I forget stuff all the time. Like it's a very it's something, I've spoken to a lot of people who heal a lot of people over the years, and there's something about even the symptoms that's been plaguing you, and you're praying every day, please, can I be free of this? And it's totally weird mechanism that, like, within 2 weeks of it going away, you completely forget you ever had it.
Yes.
And you have to be reminded of it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's other stuff. I remember stuff like every now and then, like something will come back briefly and I'll be like, oh yeah, I used to have this all the time. So there is a bunch of those that I forgot to say with these benefits. I think the important point is that the only reason that we are sticking with this is because we do feel better. It is sometimes a hard way to describe. Now, people sometimes stick with something because they're getting like a drug high off it. Even like famously foods you're intolerant to, a lot of people, the reason they keep eating them is because if you eat something that your immune system has a reaction to, you also get like an adrenaline spike. So people are like getting an adrenaline high, but it's not actually good for them. So a great question about this protocol is, are we that? Are we just adrenaline junkies? Are we just taking high amounts of these nutrients and getting off on the high? Well, I would say one of the ways you could tell if that's the case is you feel good when you do it and you feel worse when you don't. My experience is actually the opposite. I feel better on the days that I don't do it. But I feel so much better. I'm like, wow. And then decide to take it again because I want more of the benefits again. So that indicates to me that I'm not getting off on the high of the caffeine or the nutrient poisoning or whatever it might be. I am getting better and I'm detoxifying something, and I feel really good when I take a break from the detoxification process, but it also motivates me to want to do more of it.
Believe it or not, I actually dread doing it. I hate taking 50 pills at once. I just don't want to do it tonight. Don't want to do it. No, I got to keep progressing. And so I force myself to do it, and it sucks. The first 10 minutes of it really sucks because I do such high dosages. I'm forcing myself into a nauseous state, and then I calibrate a little bit and I'm feeling better. And then after 30 minutes, I start feeling really good because if I've done it just right, and I start putting on my music, and I can feel the bones shifting in my jawline ever so slightly. I can feel, because I do 500 milligrams, 400 milligrams of zinc sometimes. And when you get to that high level of dose after a while, after a few months of doing this, then you start reaching new peaks of zinc storage amounts that you never had before. And with those new peaks comes new peaks of hormones, new balance peaks of hormones, that the most optimal you've ever been in. And as that's happening, your body is changing with that into the best optimal version it's ever been. And like I said, I can feel my jawline, just the jawbones, I can feel them minorly cracking and shifting around. I can feel my lower teeth straightening because they were super crooked before. It's still a little bit hard, but I can feel them at the high dosages ever so slightly shifting, and it feels really pleasant. It's a weird, pleasant feeling. I don't know how to describe it. It's pressures that were there my whole life are releasing, and I can feel I'm growing into the size that I was meant to. I've been wearing a shoe that's been too small my whole life, and that shoe is finally growing to fit the foot that's inside. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but that's every very high dose I do. That's the feeling I get. That's why I continue to do this more and more. And as you've said, I look better than my last meeting. So, at least a visual aspect, it seems to be working. I feel better, and the better you tend to feel. This isn't just my theory. This is a theory everywhere, but the healthier your DNA is, the more your physical attraction reflects that. The more symmetrical your face becomes, the more lighter your eyes get, the thicker your hair. This is all kind of just, like I said, it's a result of better DNA health.
You said to me in one of your messages, I think your hair's going to start growing back soon. And I thought, well, if that does, I think, that'll get some headlines, right?
Let's give it a year on that one. I don't want to say.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's a while away. Yeah, and I genuinely don't care. I know it was one of the things that motivated you. I said hair was always a hassle to me. I always had it short and never knew what to do with it. Obviously, you enjoy having long hair.
Should I show the audience my unbound hair just to show that it's the lion's mane I portray it to be? I keep my bun up all the time because it just gets in my face all the time. But
that's why I used to hate having long hair. Yeah, it's always in the way. But it's, what's the word? It's a responsibility.
Yeah. So it's a lot.
Awesome. So yeah, maybe one day I'll have hair like Jacob's. Then everyone will really take note. But for now, we are still in the research phase. If you would like to join us in the research, what do they do, Jacob?
They go to the forum and they post online. Again, I don't make any money from that forum. So this is just to help another guy out who did this for me for, the goodness of his heart. He gave me an account to post on for free because he saw my ex post and was like, yep, I agree with that. So he started letting me post online, and he's got a small membership fee, $5 a month, I think is what it is. I'm not sure what the new charges. It might be $7, but just a small monthly fee if you want to post. And then I will respond accordingly and try and help you calibrate, because it's my service to humanity. We'll call it that.
Awesome. And yeah, you're helping Jacob with his research project, I guess, in a sense. But yeah, and he's not trying to publish or make any money out of it. So, he really is just doing it because he wants to help people. And I do see, people putting questions sometimes underneath my videos. And I tend to say to them, please refer this to Jacob in the forum. Usually I can't really answer, unless they're asking me specifically about my experience, and then I don't mind answering. But, I'm not expert enough in this yet that I can give you advice on it. So please do go to Jacob.
Please read that page 1 thoroughly before you deciding to try it, because it's robust, and I spent a lot of time getting as much detail as I could to give you the most informed decision that you can make based on what you're reading. And there's plenty, like another guy who his screen name is like What is Aging. He followed my original post with a bunch of information on like the previous posts of other posters and their experiences. So you have a whole library on that first page of different things you can sift through to see testimonials. You can see the good and the bad. I'm not trying to hide anything. There are a couple people who haven't had success on it, and I don't know if it's because the supplements they're getting are faulty, if their bodies are just different than ours, if they, I don't know. But the amount of people that have failed on this is far, far fewer than the amount of people who have had success. It's just the people who have had success don't tend to post as much because they're going about their daily lives happy and healthy. It's the ones who need help that go to that forum.
I am also surprised. I mean, I certainly haven't read all of it, but I am surprised at the amount of people who share what they're doing, and it's just like it's pretty radically like off what you recommend, and then they're having issues, and it's like, yeah, and like I mean, I guess do it pretty radically differently in that I have way less molybdenum than you recommend, but this is something that I started with the amount you recommended, and I have a reason for it, and you and I have clarified it and all the rest of it. But it just seems like people are like, yeah, I took, I don't know, half as much biotin, or I took twice as much of this, and then a lot of the time you're like,
well, duh.
why? Or like, I mean, obviously people are, this is a research project, and you could say it's all helpful data on the research project if people want to do these different amounts, but then they shouldn't be surprised if they start having problems. Now, if they follow the exact directions and they have problems, then then they're part of your research project and you help them. But if they're doing something completely different, then it's,
if you don't take the
their own
protocol, I mainly can't help you because I don't know what the issue is. Like if I know you take the exact of what I recommend and you're dealing with issues, then it's a lot easier for me to say, okay, based on the number I gave you, if you're still having that GERD, for example, you probably need more molybdenum. But if you don't take like any biotin at all and don't tell me, for example, well, then you need more biotin and you got to take more biotin, but you're not telling me that. So, and it's always, I swear, it's like 99% of the time, it's some person with, who has done their own research. It's the people who have done their own research for a little too long, but not long enough to know that they don't know as much as they think they do. It's the people who have done enough research to be dangerous, the ones who come in with all the confidence in the world, like, I think I know what I'm doing and I don't need that much biotin. Those are the ones that fail the most. This is an enormously out of the box formula that no internet website is going to confirm that is good for you, and then
or even worse, AI.
Oh yeah, AI is back and forth. It sometimes loves it or it hates it.
Well, that's when you explain it thoroughly. But I think what I mean more is I just kind of hate that people are asking AI questions about their health these days. I think it's okay to use as a tool if you're asking what is the mainstream perspective about X, and you understand that is all it's going to give you. But if you are trying to ascertain truth, that's really not what AI is for. There's this concept in science of garbage in, garbage out. Like, so the outputs are only ever going to be as useful, accurate, or helpful as the inputs. And because the inputs of AI tends to be a bunch of mainstream stuff, it tends to be a bunch of propaganda, it tends to be the stuff that's heavily biased because of all kinds of government issues and business issues and all the rest of it, you can't expect it to help you to discover what's true unless you are using it with eyes open as to everything I just said and more. So what I'm saying is, if you check with AI, is it safe to do this much EGCG or whatever, it's going to say what it's going to say, and that's fine. That's the mainstream perspective, and you can go with that if you want. But then to adjust the formula to like, oh, I'm going to use a lot less of this because AI says it's bad for me or whatever, then you're you're missing the point of the whole thing.
Yeah, well, invention is something that AI is not good at identifying, because AI, well, at least the AI that we have access to, is not it's not going to put pieces together that don't exist. It's programmed against that. It's going to take existing information and regurgitate it for you. It's not going to be not ChatGPT anyway. Maybe there are AI models that are more of the experimental, mad science type of AIs that will somehow make all these theories. But ChatGPT, for example, is not going to follow a theory along. You got to feed it a very strong prompt for it to agree with you on that one. It's going to give you whatever mainstream article is going to give you and say too much zinc is known to cause problems, and you should be always consulting a physician before you do any of this. That's what it's going to tell you. And I mean, I can't really argue with that, but I can't tell you not to listen to very reasonable direction. But if you want to, let me give you a phrase here. It is those who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world that actually do it. So you do have to be a little crazy for something like this and go against what you're told if you want to have any sort of success on this particular protocol.
And by the way, am I saying don't consult a physician? Not only am I not saying that, I do consult a physician. It's just that I pick my physician carefully. I pick my physician to be someone who actually understands all of this kind of stuff. And so I do not recommend that you do not talk to a doctor. I recommend that you but I also do not recommend that you talk to a normal doctor about this, because they will just not understand it. What is optimal and ideal is to find a doctor who, maybe they don't understand this, because hardly anyone does, but they're at least open-minded, and they're willing to deal with facts, right? So
yep.
you can do the kind of test. Yeah, you can do the kind of testing that I do.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I said, if nothing else, the last few years has revealed that you should, at the very least, question things when it comes to the health industry. That's
most definitely, yes. The vested interest and all the rest of it, and stuff is changing, right? Like before, it was a crazy conspiracy theory to say fluoride lowered IQ. I think these days it is the official FDA policy.
About time.
I think at the time of filming this, they've just made a switch about the safety of certain mRNA technology, about whether it is safe for the average person to have or not. All of this kind of thing. All this stuff is in flux and changing. So remember that as well, and don't not talk to a doctor, but try and only talk to a doctor who actually understands all of this kind of stuff. They may not know the details, but they understand the general spirit of it. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing, Jacob. We told people where to go, lowtoxinforum.com. They can follow you on X or Twitter as well if they like. We'll put that handle in the show notes. Please support the podcast if you can by sharing this episode. Do leave a comment underneath. Don't ask me about specifics about how to do the formula, because that's up to Jacob. But anything else, definitely do comment. I always like to see your comments, and I answer all of them sooner or later. And we'll have Jacob on again at least one more time, because we'll have him on sharing his DNA methylation results, showing has he really lengthened his telomeres, has he really slowed down his pace of aging, has he really what would we call it? Revivified, rejuvenated his cells. Tune in to find out in a few months' time.
Figure out.
Awesome.
33 right now, or 34 almost, and so we'll see if that sticks.
Awesome. And you don't live a particularly healthy lifestyle, so I'd say even if it says you're a few years younger than you are, 2 years younger than you are, I'd consider that pretty impressive. But let's see what it says.
Yep, I'm excited. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed that, I recommend watching our latest episode, which you can do by clicking above. And make sure to subscribe, like the video, comment, and share with anyone who you think might appreciate it. Thank you.